Good evening. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host on CWS, Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, a special thank you. We really appreciate that. About several weeks ago, tonight is a very special night because of the topic. I'm getting an echo and I don't know why this is the case. Just give me a second and let me try and fix this and get back to you. I am back. Sorry about that. Tonight is a very special night because of the topic. A few days ago we celebrated Father's Day, and the topic tonight is about fathers and sons. If I were asked to do this about a year or two ago, let's say 3 or 4 years ago, I would have hesitated. But several weeks ago, when my friend Nigel Barto, who is a family member of CWS, some of you have seen him on CWS several weeks ago, broached me with a topic, with the idea of doing a show with several guys, several men, who are part of his new play, Too Late, to talk about fathers and sons. The play is about relationships, it's about fathers and sons. We'll talk some more about that in detail as the show progresses. Without hesitation, I said, let's do it, because I think it's important. I think there are so many people out there, so many men who have had issues with their fathers, and so many fathers have had issues with their sons. I think it is time we have a discussion or a conversation about it. Get to talk to some men some of whom are acting in a play concerning fathers and sons, but who themselves have relationships or have children, or had some kind of a relationship with their father, good or bad. I don't know. We're here to find out tonight. We're here to get some perspective on this topic. But before I do that, I want to leave you with this before I take a break. Do it. Whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, do it. You have an idea. Ask yourself, before you succumb to doubt, before you take your idea to someone who you believe is smarter than you are, brighter than you are, know better than you do, and listen to their rejection of your idea, ask yourself, why were you chosen by this idea? Armed with that knowledge, believe. It is very important. Believe, be committed, and act, but act right. Do not give up. Everything around us today, every piece of technology, every social issue, every social change started with an idea. And I talk about this many times on the show, and I can't say it enough, because there are so many of us who are being robbed because many of us have this fear and this reluctance to pursue our idea, to pursue our goals. Let's take a break, and I will introduce to you the 5 men that are here tonight to talk about fathers and sons. I'm back. I said it was going to be a short break because I am just as excited as many of you to start this program. On my side are the 5 men I mentioned to you. Starting from your left, Nigel Barto, playwright, Anthony Harper, James Egbuta, Robert Starks, and Adrian Luke Sinclair. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Happy to be here.
So, let me start by talking about this play Too Late, right? And this is what I have here. Lee, the 30-something stoic, estranged father of Dread. He hasn't been around for 10 years and returns after the death of his son to face the music with the family and tell a few truths of his own. Dread is the almost 18-year-old, smart, depressed, letter-writing son who commits suicide. Uncle Man is a restless soul, in and out of work, 30-something. He's not considered a deep guy, and he doesn't have a close relationship with his son, Hush. He is Dread's uncle. Hush is 19 and is Dread's cousin, but raised in the same house as brothers. Pop is the patriarch who protects his family at all costs. He's a military vet. He suffers from dementia. I'm not going to tell you more about the show because I want you to go out and support Brother Nigel Barto. And believe you me, I've seen his show before. I've seen his play before. The brother is very talented, and this play, we'll find out during the course of this conversation, has taken some time to write and to produce. So I would love you to support it. But we use this play as the backdrop for our conversation tonight. And I thought how appropriate. Here are 5 men who are going to be acting, playing roles that mirrors life. And so, well, let me start by saying, Nigel, congratulations on the play Too Late. You know, it's a story of betrayal and forgiveness, of despair and hope, of love. Please tell us more about the plot and the significance of fatherhood.
I'm happy to. So, this really started around fathers and sons, and at a time when a lot of young men were sharing their story with me about growing up in a single parent household and wanting to know their dad, talk to him, have a relationship. And so that's kind of where I started with the story, as a way to try and give an opportunity for a young man to be able to say all that he's wanted to say to his dad. And I wanted to find a bit of a shocking, traumatic way to have the dad stand up and hear finally what he had to say. And so because of the act, so I do that in the actions of this young man Dread, in his death, and the father comes back after 10 years to learn about his death and to not only uncover some things but speak to some truths of about his life and what has happened before. So it is a lot about fathers and sons. There's one father and son, and it's about, is it too late for them, and or is it too late for him? How does he move forward after his son is no longer with us? And it's also about another father and son in the family, and are they going to bring any kind of hope and an opportunity to kind of change the course so it doesn't necessarily go as it did from the first. So while there was a lot of family drama, and they're funny characters, because in all families it's funny, right? So we have an auntie and an uncle saying off-the-wall things. Largely it is also about fathers and sons, and with Father's Day just passing, we're so happy to be invited to not only talk about the show, which speaks to that, but to talk about our own experiences, being sons and fathers and so forth.
For the listening audience, Too Late premieres off Broadway on July 16 and runs for 5 evening performances at the Poets Den Theater in the East Harlem Arts District,
That's correct.
right?
Poet Stand Theater, 108th Street, number 6 train. Be there for the premiere. Come again on Wednesday.
So how did this project get started?
And so I'm a writer. That's who I am. That's what I do. And so that's where I started with creating the story. And I put it down and picked it back up and said, I really want to have this young man have a voice. And so I worked on it. I massaged it, and then we went through a typical process of moving into table readings and working with some of these great people here. And making the decision to say, you know what, it's time to take it to the stage, and all of my actors have been so enthusiastic and on board from day one, and I'm very pleased about that. And so here we are. We've been moving into informing all of you about the show, hoping you will come out and give us a try and be moved, be entertained, and we're about a month away from our premiere.
1 month. A month away. Wow.
Yes, July 16th.
July 16th.
Yeah.
So what roles do each of you play? Let's start with you, Adrian.
My name is Adrian Luke Sinclair. I play Uncle Man.
I'm Robert Starks. I play Lee.
You play Lee. You're
Yes.
the dad,
Yes, sir.
young dad. And you, James.
I'm James Aguda. I play Dread.
You play Dread.
Yeah, Anthony Harper, I play Pap, which is the patriarch of the family.
You're Pop.
Yeah, Pap.
You're the man with the big stick.
Yes.
You're the
Big
guy. You're the guy that will fight,
Yes.
protect your family.
That's right. I'll protect my family at all costs. That's my whole thing.
Let me ask you guys, this. James, when you were approached by Nigel, I've seen you in one of Nigel's play before.
Yeah,
Excellent, wonderful actor. But when he came with this play, and a lot of the build up this play surround your demise. What went through your mind? How did that feel to you?
I was actually intrigued by playing, Dread, because he's not your average typical troubled teenager. He does very well in school, and he's graduating with a high rank. And it's just interesting, how he's dealing with, his father not being in his life, but yet he manages to keep his grades up in school and keep himself together. I thought it was very interesting to play that.
You're not from America, right?
Well, I'm from America. I was born here, but I'm
Okay.
of Nigerian descent.
You're Nigerian descent. Wonderful. And you, Anthony.
Yeah.
You're Pop,
Yeah.
right? You've done Nigel's play before.
I actually did a reading with him.
A reading before. What was this like for you? And I'm asking this question from the point of view of, let's say, are you a dad?
No, I'm not.
You're not a dad.
No.
Okay. Taking into consideration the father-son dynamic, right? As an actor, you have to draw on something,
Yeah.
some of life's experiences. You got this role. You're the patriarch of the family. Strong role. What did you draw on?
Oh, okay. Well, there's a couple of things I draw on. One is that even though I'm not a dad biologically, there are a lot of kids that I have been in my life. That I've helped raise or try to give some type of structure to.
Okay.
So that's, I'm not a dad in a biological sense, but, I have done things with children to try to help guide them, forward. Also, another thing is I look at the men in my family. My father, he was a very strong role model. My great-grandfather was a very strong role model. I have some uncles that were very strong role models, and being involved in my family's from the South, so being involved in such a close-knit family where you see a lot of things, you actually get a chance to experience a whole lot of seeing just what a man does and how a man really looks after his family and what he needs to do to look after his family. So I can draw from all those different experiences.
And Yes, sir. You.
Yes, sir.
Lee, the father.
Yes, sir.
Are you a dad?
I am.
You
I'm
are?
a dad of a
Yeah.
12-year-old.
Boy.
Yeah, 12-year-old boy.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're playing this role.
Yes,
And,
sir.
It's a very pivotal role, very important. Pretty much carries the show. I mean, all of you are important, but Lee is this particular kind of father, right?
Yes, sir.
Has a nephew living in the house. You have a brother, right? What did you draw?
Wow. I drew actually from several things. The first thing I drew on the relationship that I didn't have with my dad. My dad would have probably been more like Lee. Yeah, he was more like Lee, so I drew on that. And the second thing I drew on is the relationship I have with my son now at 12. You know, because you know, the show, like, first of all, I'm honored to be working with Nigel, because I've actually seen his work, and I was like, oh, if I could just be a part. But this role that I actually am in right now, it takes you, and it takes the actual listeners and the people who are actually going to see the play, it's going to take you for a ride. And, you know, it's that kind of thing. And for me, it took me through a lot of emotional roller coasters actually during the character development, because some things were actually personal, you know. But
Personal
yeah,
for you.
yeah, some things, yes, some things were actually very personal for me.
Let me go a little deeper. Can you describe your father in one word? I mean,
In one word,
Yeah.
Angry.
angry. What about you?
Wow. You know, I actually,
Hold on a second. Let me bring you. Go ahead.
I could actually totally relate to what Robert is saying, because I come from a similar experience. You know, my dad wasn't around, and I always said to myself, I would never be the type of father he was. But to get back to your question, in one word, when you asked him that question, at first I pondered to myself, indifferent, but I really can't say that because I don't know the man, but I will say that he was selfish.
You were selfish.
He was selfish.
And what role do you play again?
I play Uncle Man.
Uncle Man. That's the other, his brother.
It's my brother.
Wow. And so you were able to draw on that because you have a kind of similar experience with your son in the play.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You have a son in real life?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old is he?
My son is actually 15.
15.
Yeah. So, yeah, I could actually draw from that as well, because even being a non-custodial parent and having, you know, a child that actually lives with me, I could see the differences and how I get to interact with my daughter, whereas with my son it's a constant rebuilding our relationship. The bond is there. There's no question that
Right.
I love him and he loves me. But the way I know my daughter and the way I know my son is somewhat different. And I could definitely relate to the character.
I'm gonna ask this question. Let me bring Mr. Barto into focus. Well, let me ask the same question of you, Nigel. One word, describe your father.
One word. I would say sensitive,
Sensitive.
and all that could entail. The positives and the sometimes not so positives of that word.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So as in kind and feeling and caring, and at times it goes into a different place of being too sensitive and need to back off, need to have some patience, and don't be insensitive.
And what about you, Anthony?
I would say responsible.
Responsible.
Yeah.
So you had that kind of experience from your father.
Yeah, that he was a very responsible man. My father worked. My mother and my father got married at 16 and 17 years old.
Uh-huh.
My father worked from the time basically they got married until he passed away Christmas, and he worked the same job. And the man like did not miss a day, maybe like 1 or 2 days that whole time, because his whole thing was he was responsible for providing for his family. You know, so that's why we utilize responsible for.
So I'm going to ask another general question. What aspects of this play Too Late resonates with your real life experiences? Well, Nigel, you wrote this play.
Yes.
I'll get back to you. So I'll take you on, James.
Take on James.
Yes, you're the son.
Okay, well, that's actually a very interesting question and a difficult question for me to answer, kind of, because I feel like I'm so different from Dredd, and Dredd is so different from me. You know, I grew up with my father. My father is still in my life. You know, I live with my father. My father, you know, stresses education, and he's very strict. He's very in my life. And so it's so, you know, me and Dredd are so different, yet we're so the same. And, you know, the way we express ourselves. I mean, I love to write letters, and Dredd writes letters. You know, I love to write overall. Like, I write poetry, I write stories. So I just think that that's how me and Dredd connect, and I feel like through that connection, we can bring him to life.
So, what did you draw on in relating to Lee, your dad? You know, your dad is in your life, your dad is a good guy, you know, all these things seem to be a functional relationship. What did you draw on?
Well, because I know Dredd is very angry at his father, so what I drew on was, you know, the fact that sometimes I believe my dad is too into my life, and sometimes I feel like he's too controlling, and that makes me angry, and I have to draw from that in order to be angry.
Do you think, as a young man, you're entitled to that anger, to be angry with your father?
Yes.
Do you think he should know better as an adult, or as a human being, he should know better and be able to cut you some slack?
I think a lot of times my father forgets that I'm 19 years old.
Right.
He lives in this world where he still thinks I'm 12 or, you know, 13, where he can dictate everything to me, and I feel like, you know, that's something he has to break out of.
Right.
So I do think he has to cut me some slack.
Well, I'm a lot older than 19. I look at the same thing. My father still thinks I'm 12 and so I'm 2. And I love to tell him, I'm like, I am your child, but I'm no longer a child.
Exactly.
You feel comfortable telling him that, Nigel?
Yes.
I see you have broad shoulders and biceps. So, you know, we are both from the Caribbean.
That's right. The first time. Yeah. Eyes past me, man.
You know, we have Caribbean background, so we know how daring that can be.
Definitely. Scary.
But I wanna do something different. I want to infuse or inject myself into this conversation, my experience. You know, I have 2 sons, twins, identical, grown men. Well, they're young men, very brilliant, very, you know, very astute. And I'm bringing this up because I want to stir the pot a little, right? I had them when I was young, when I was still a child. Well, still very young, still very unmature. In a time when I grew up, well, I'm from Guyana. I grew up in a society where you fathered or mothered a child at a very early age. You looked at, or you looked down upon, or you looked at a certain way. Now, nobody actually really did tell me that they were disappointed in anything. And a lot of it could be my own, you know, my own imagination, but you felt it. There was a certain atmosphere, and I think there was some withdrawal, right? Then I migrated to the States, and I saw my children, my sons, occasionally when I was able to travel, you know, finances allowed and so on. But there was here's the part about this story, and I want you guys to bring up to talk about this. The narrative was not told by me. The narrative was told by their environment and those around them and those who thought they knew me. How important? I have my feelings on this because, as an adult now, I see how important it is that you be part of that narrative, regardless of what the circumstances. Because you're talking about human beings. People get angry, children get angry, and as much as they may grow and understand, there's probably still some residual, and it's unfair to rob them of that anger, I believe. I think only time will heal. But the question I'm trying to get at here, the narrative. How important, each of you, believe it is for you to be part of the narrative of who you are to your child, to your son? Start with you, Mr. Barto.
Well, I think it's extremely important. You have to be able to be present and let them learn who you are. And I don't have children, but I'll speak about my dad. In the last few years, I've been getting to know him again. And it's been kind of amazing. Because sure, I've known him as a child and a young man, and then known of him through other people. But actually seeing him for who he is, in all the perfect and imperfect ways, I really appreciate a lot of things more, and also understanding why certain things were done, understanding certain sacrifices, his great strengths and his limitations, and it's actually all good, because that's who he is, and that's okay. And it also the best thing about it also is it helps me to see who I become as well.
The question that comes to mind is, did you arrive at that from observation, or did you have a chat?
Some of it's observation, and some of it is being proactive and talking with them, and not necessarily talking as in interrogating. Like I want to know this specifically, and I must ask that. But just in daily life, asking questions, having a talk, and just seeing him for a regular cool person, as opposed to always the dad.
Gotcha. Anthony, what about you? What do you think about the narrative?
I think the narrative is very important. My mother took the kids down to North Carolina in the 90s, and I got a chance to live just basically me and my father together. And that was such a wonderful experience because I got to know who he was as a man. So I really got a chance to really know him, got a chance to understand him, and got a chance to understand a lot of things that come from me. Like there's a certain, my father has a very slight sense of humor, Now I didn't realize that I had the same type of sense of humor that he had until I'm really focusing on him.
Were you ever angry with him for anything?
No.
Okay.
No. I never had, now you might talk to my brothers, they might have those issues.
Right. What about you, James? You're still young, you're 19, you think this guy, your dad, don't want to address him as guy, your dad should cut you some slack.
Well, I mean,
but he's in your life.
He's in my life, and the thing is that I appreciate that because my dad was born in Nigeria, I wasn't. So there are certain things I get to learn from him, certain life lessons that I maybe wouldn't have learned from a normal, typical American dad or whatever that image would be. So I cherish that.
Okay. And you?
I think it's important. I think it's very important. I mean, my son right now is my son is my best friend, and I'm his best friend. I better be. But the thing is there's a lot about me that he needed to know. Like he is Caribbean descent on both parts, but he didn't know because my dad he's African American and Cuban.
And Cuban?
Yeah, black Afro-Cuban.
Right.
And so his his grandfather, but his grandfather on his mom's side is from Guyana. He's Guyanese.
Oh, really?
He's from Guyana. So right. So at first it was very hard because she was very me. You know, me. But the only thing I tell young brothers, I tell older guys, I tell them all, the only thing you can do is just be, and be there for your child. You know, because there's some things that you will not, you won't have control over.
Right.
You know, but as long as your child, and a lot of people thinks that because they're young, they don't remember. I remember times like my son is now at home in Miami, which is where I'm from, with my family. And before he left, you know, he's 12. He's a big 12. He's about my height almost. And I was lying down, and he put his head on my chest, and he was listening. And he was sitting there. I'm like, Justin, I'm tired. So he was like, you know, Dad, thank you so much for being a really good father. You know, thank you so much. And I always tell him, I want to show you what it's like. Every day is not, you know, it's not going to be rosy. Sometimes we have to look in that cabinet and figure out what we're going to make for breakfast and what we're going to do for lunch and dinner. And, you know, and he's seen me break down. Like, you know, there's been times I'm like, what am I going to do? And he's seen me cry. And, you know, I tell him, no, I don't, because these are things my dad never made me understand. I learned Spanish from listening to him, not because he taught me. You know, it was a Spanish and English home, but I listened to him talk about my mom, and you know, and other things and other people whom he had met. You know, and I just picked up from there. So I just figured with my son, this is who I am. You know, and he loves who I am. But going back to the thing, when he was little, I used to put him on my chest, and I used to rock him, and he used to listen to my heartbeat. And, you know, and going back to people thinking that, you know, they're young, you know, they won't remember. And he was sitting there, he was like, Dad, thank you so much. You know, you really taught me. I used to tell him there are no plan Bs. There's no plan B. Whatever you say you're going to do, that's what you need to do.
Right.
You know, and you work on how you're going to get to that place where you want to be, but there's no plan B.
Amen.
Because if there's a plan B, you'll fall back on plan B when many hard times come. And I told him that it's not an option that you fail school, because he had been going through a whole lot. And so he was like, thank you, Dad, for instilling it in me. You know, you're the best dad in the whole wide world. And he stopped. He said, wait, I can hear your heartbeat. And when he said, he looked up and he said, and like it broke me. Like I was looking, I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom. It broke me because he was a baby when I used to do that. And he used to say, Daddy, I can hear your heartbeat.
Wow.
So he sat up and he said, remember I used to say that when I was a kid?
Wow.
And so when he said that, I was like, yeah, I do. I have to go to the bathroom. But it just showed me that, you know, the things that I have done, you know, he would never forget, because it's real. Like he thought that Dad just had it all when he wanted it, when he, you know, asked my dad. And I told his mom, let him see what it really is. And he comes, and, you know, I'm like, so, Justin, we only have about this much, so we need to cut this and cut that. But I'm like, this is what it is. And the last thing I told him, I'm like, this is what men do. Because eventually, you're going to have a family.
Right.
And this is what men do. You know, it will get hard, you will cry. But when it's all done, you wipe the dust off your butt, you get up and you keep going. So, I think that it is important, very important.
Thanks for that.
Sorry for talking so much.
And you.
Yes, sir. So I mean, just to piggyback off what he was saying, I mean, I feel the same in the sense that for me it's very important, because I feel like growing up, I learned what I perceived to be a man from the guys in my neighborhood, which wasn't, in fact, what a man was. So, like, fast forward to now. You know, when my son was born, I said I wanted to provide him with a better toolbox to negotiate life, you know, to be able to make the right decisions. And my son is a great kid. I mean, I can't even take credit, you know. Well, I do anyway. But anyway, he's a great kid. If I don't have any blessings in the world, I would say God blessed me with a great son. I have a great daughter as well. But you know, it's just a breath of fresh air just to be able to be in his life, even in the minimal aspect that I am now. And I'm looking forward to one day being able to, have my son come live with me so he can, really get to know me on a day-to-day basis. I mean, he spends a lot of time, but it's different, it's so different. So, I mean, again, that's all I want to impart on him, the tools to negotiate life,
The chat room. I have to visit there.
Uh-oh.
So Kali said, so happy that I was able to catch CWS on my phone as I was driving home. Question for this fantastic panel. What is one thing you wanted to hear your father say to you? Anybody?
Me was just happy.
Yes,
birthday.
you would. Go ahead. What is one thing?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Wow.
Yeah.
I think some grown men are going to cry tonight, some especially in the audience. We're not going to see them, but okay. What about you, Robert?
I love you.
I love you.
I'm proud of you.
I never heard that. That's it. I never heard that. I mean, and I just want to say this. I don't blame my father for anything. I think my father wasn't around per se, and it's because of where he worked. My sons brought me present to a lot of things I didn't realize that was absent, and I attribute that, not ever hearing that, to the era in which my father was born. I knew somehow instinctively I knew he loved me, but I never heard those words. What I present to is the strength and power of my mother. So I think I never missed it. There's a lot of things I never paid much attention to consciously until I heard my own sons cry out or ask that, why this, why not this, why not that? And then you're standing there or sitting there helpless because you really don't have the language and the vocabulary to explain or to articulate. Why? Because you yourself don't know. But anyway, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
And you, James?
It's funny because, I have heard him say I'm proud of you, but there are times when I don't really think he means it as much as I want him to. So I would just like
Whoa.
to...
No, let's fly past that. This is no, you're not going to get away with that, James. You said, he says that he has said to you that he's proud of you, but there are times when you think he doesn't mean it. Why?
I just feel like he's such a difficult person to please. He's so, he sets high standards for all of us. He wants us to be the best. And I think, most Nigerian fathers are like that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I just feel like he's not content ever with, the accomplishments I've made. When I did Christmas weekend, he only came to one of my shows, and that was really one of the first shows that he's ever actually came to. And that for me, other people would be content with that, but I would just like him to be there more and to really support me in my career and really just say, I'm proud of you. And
have
really
you ever told him?
No.
Well, here's the thing. Just try this on for a second. We're all human beings. And there are times when people, because of their upbringing, because of what they were exposed to, may not be as emotionally intelligent as those of us who were raised in certain environments or exposed to certain environments and certain kind of emotional dynamics. And sometimes, fair or unfair, we are children, we are sons, and sometimes we want more out of them than even they are capable of doing. And I think, I'm just throwing this out there. You may want to examine this, that in his heart of heart visiting once, he felt he made a giant step. And sometimes I think that whether it's our mother or our father, just relationships, we need to take people in context. Now you said he's from Nigeria. And I don't know what the culture is there, what cultural restrictions he has, or how much courage it took for him to come and see that. But I think sometimes people express their love in different ways. It isn't always in a way that we can identify or fits a mold that we have. But give him some slack. Give him some slack. Talk to him. Right? Tell him how you really feel. Because he might be thinking, gosh, my son is happy that I went. And not privy to what you really feel. And the first time you approach it, you might hear him say something like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you came to me. Right. Anthony, you're not going to get away from this question. What is one thing you wanted to hear your father say to you?
Wow, okay. I guess, and it's because of the era that he was
because of
the era that he was brought up in.
Okay.
I guess it will be I love you.
Right.
Even though he showed it through all the fiber, everything that he did. You know, but it's just something that men at that era just didn't express. You know, as now as we're in this era and everybody's a little bit more sensitive.
Right. You want pops. Yeah. You want pops to say I love you.
Yeah, that's
all
right.
Right. You still want it?
Huh?
You still do?
I would love to hear my father say.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, eventually one day I will.
Okay.
You know, so.
I believe you will.
Yeah, one day I will.
You're putting it out there.
No, it's gonna happen. I know.
And you're fortunate he's still around.
No, my father passed.
Oh, he passed.
My father passed. Yeah, on Christmas. But one day that.
Sorry. Yes.
We'll be reunited now.
I hear you, brother. I hear that. And Mr. Barto.
Yes. Before I answer the question, I want to give a quick little story about James and what he just said. And so I could relate to what you're saying, James, and I totally understand what you were saying, Selwyn, about the time and the place and the generation and the culture. But I will say that I saw your father walk into the show because I was in the back of the audience and he was parking the car. And your mom came in and she sat down. And now everyone's gonna know. But anyway, and your dad came in and I was there near the door, and so he told me who he was. And he didn't want to interrupt anything of trying to find a seat, because I was like, oh, you could, and he's like, I'm good, and he stood there. He's tall and handsome like James.
Yes.
And a couple times, and at some point you came on stage, and I looked at him, and his face lit up. Right? And yet, I'm sure that's something he would never tell you. Right? So the fact that you just said that, it made me go back, and I saw him, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
And I could see that he's that kind of a man too.
Yes.
He seems a bit reserved, and he's like, yeah, I'm here, and but I could see emotion on his face. So I think it's there. I would bet.
I'm glad you told that story, Nigel. I'm glad you told that story. It's very important because a lot of times what we think is happening and what is really happening are divergent.
But for me to answer the question,
yes.
And when I was younger, a teenager, mostly, I think the biggest thing that I wanted was a hug from my father.
A hug.
I think a hug for me would have said everything that I thought maybe needed to be said, or maybe not even know what needed to be said. But that would have just kind of been that it's okay, life will be okay, we will figure it out. You are accepted, you are good enough. All of that stuff would have been in that hug. But what was traditional for him, and I venture to say as a West Indian man, was the handshake. And so even when I went like this, he went like this every single time. And even if it was me traveling, going somewhere, I haven't seen him for a little while, and that just continued on, So eventually I got comfortable and I would start doing like this. And then it started shifting, and so now he hugs me. But I was like, I don't need it now. I didn't say say that to him, but my body language is like, whatever. I don't even want to shake your hand.
Oh, wow.
And not that I was mad at him, but it was just kind of like, this is just how we're going to move together in the world, I guess, right?
You know,
But now,
Yes. he hugs. Wow.
This is weird.
I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
And Patrick, how do you think your experiences as men or fathers even make you more sympathetic or even empathetic to your respective fathers? Let's take a break. We haven't had a break. Let's take a break.
This is so juicy.
I know. Think about it. Imagine how much more juice you'll put into it after the break. All right? Please tune in tomorrow for a conversation with Clarence Bone. We are back, and there's a smile on my face because I'm enjoying this conversation. Nigel Barto said, juicy. I don't think we should take many more breaks or any more breaks tonight.
No.
We gotta let this rip, right? We have to. So the question before the break, Patrick said, how do you think your experiences as men or fathers even make you more sympathetic or even empathetic to your respective fathers? Anthony.
Me, all right.
Yes.
Okay, I'll start this one off. Well, when you're young, as a young boy, you look up to your father. Your father is the perfect person. As we all see perfection in our parents, they can do no wrong. This whole thing. Growing up and becoming my own man, I also realized the parts where my father wasn't perfect.
Part of your father what?
The parts where he wasn't perfect.
Okay.
I understand that he was a human. He wasn't a mythological creature. He wasn't Zeus sitting on top of Mount Olympus, or he was a man. I understood the good points and the bad points. And it really helped me to understand and appreciate the humanity that he was all about, the love that he was all about, the respect that he was all about. And helped to, even as I go further along in my journey, it helped to shape me. So that's my experience as far as growing up and making me more sympathetic to my father.
And you, Robert, I'm curious.
Oh.
You want me to repeat the question, or you got it?
I think I got it. I think I have it. I think that I feel sorry that my dad never really tried to get to know the phenomenal guy that I am. And I say that because I know that there were cultural differences because him being Cuban and being black, but a smile, I'm proud of you, a pat on the back, you throw a doggy bone and tell me to go get it like he did my other dogs. Those experiences that we didn't have is why I can say I feel sorry, because I have those experiences with my son now. And me doing them with my son, this is the stuff that you can't buy this.
Right.
This is the kind of stuff that when I'm old and gray and still look the same way I look right now, I can look back at it and say, wow.
Yeah.
So, I don't mean that in a bad way, because I still respect my father and I still love my father, but I'm past the angry. I'm not angry no more. And I'm not, if he were here and if he were alive, I would still, be like, hey man, let's do this, let's start where we left off. But unfortunately, my dad was the type person that, you'd have to kill him. Like he pretty much died the same way he was when he was alive. He never really said, there was really nothing that was sensitive or any type of passion. Not for his only son and his youngest born. So there was no type of compassion. Even me, the little things like running behind, and I couldn't ask for a hug. I couldn't extend because I would get pushed. So I don't, I'm not angry anymore.
Did your anger leave before or after he passed?
Before.
Before.
Because my son was born.
Oh.
And when my son was born, it was out of, I can't, sometimes the cycle continues and you don't realize that you are continuing the cycle.
Right.
And so with my son, even though I was telling my son's mother, I was like, I wanted a girl. She was like, well, why do you want a girl? You want a girl? I'm like, yeah, I want a girl. Because I didn't know if I was equipped. Because I didn't, my mom was the one she was the matriarch. She held it down. My dad was the breadwinner. He would bring in all the money and come and sit at the table, and the food had to be ready, and we had to be in bed by 8 o'clock every night. But the fun of running around in the parks and the throwing the football and the teaching, basketball and all that stuff. Actually, believe it or not, I learned from my sisters because I was the youngest and they were strong like that. But he invested in them, before I came along. So I would feel sorry.
I'm glad we're having this conversation because I am learning things about even myself and my experiences that I never ever paid attention to. When I was growing up, I'm the last of 9 children, and I'm like 5 years after my last sister, the sister before me. So I was pretty much a loner all the time, most of the time. They doted on me when I was growing up and so on. And my father wasn't there, and not as an absent father, but because of where he worked and so on. But I never missed those things. I never knew I should miss those things until I had my sons. And they grew up and they brought sort of, it was shocking. I was like mesmerized, I was confused, what do I do? I never learned how to really be a father. And it was painful, very painful. But who do you tell that to? Who do you, because there's so much noise around you, what you should, but nobody ever said, well, or accusations, but nobody ever said, well, this is how you do it. I never knew that. I never knew that I should be playing football or something with my father. I never knew that. I think what might be responsible for that, when you grow up in a large family, there's an ethos that gets created from the older ones that you fall into. And you just automatically say, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. So this is fascinating to me, hearing these things. But anyway, this show is not about me. Well, that's not fair. I am a man. James, you. Patrick's question. But then you don't have any children. But the question though, and it's a brilliant way how Patrick articulated it. He said, how do you think your experiences as men or fathers, have make you more sympathetic or even empathetic to your respective fathers? So not having a father doesn't exclude you. How was your experience? You're only 19. But
I actually sympathize with my father more now because, I know he's older now, and you grow old and you get tired, and sometimes you don't have the energy to do certain things, and so I kind of sympathize with that, and I use that to justify his way of, not fully being present in my career and my career choices.
I just want to interject one thing, because I know we're talking about basketball and all that stuff. Sometimes I think is that we have an idea of what our fathers were supposed to do with us.
yeah,
But they were doing something with us, and we just didn't recognize that they were doing something with us.
that's brilliant.
So I think that we really have to focus on that. Like
Yeah.
my father, we didn't play basketball, but he was a handyman. I mean, we used to go to the basement.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Do woodwork or that kind of stuff. That's where we had our connection.
Robert, you wanted to say
Now, the difference is, it's true from what he's saying with most parent fathers. My father didn't. So that's what the anger was with me. My father didn't. I wanted it. It's different to be the youngest and the only boy, and you have a father.
Right.
Your father goes fishing. He did sports. He could build a car from scratch. He went to the junkyards often, and I would have to ask, or my mom would make him, take me fishing. Or I still don't know how to, I'm not scared of a worm, but I don't know how to put a worm on a hook. I don't even know if the fish is eating the worm or is he on the hook. But in the times that we went, he told her that he took me, but I would have to sit in the truck for 2 and 3 hours. So I was angry, but then, at the same time, a part of me, I know, like, people say, it was the time, but I mean, was that really the time? I mean, I know that there are exceptions. I just think my dad was the exception,
The question that comes to mind, do you think your dad loved you?
For me?
Yes, you. With those experiences, yes, we say he was a product of his environment, his culture. You're no longer angry, you have your own son, and you have this loving bond with your son and so on. You're much more mature now. But as a man, do you think he did the best way he could?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't.
What are you present to now? What are you present to now in terms of when you said no? What are you present to?
Because
Is the anger there?
No, I can't, like, honestly, like, I think everyone here could sit and think of one time
Right.
that you had with your father that was just made you say, oh, I remember that time.
Yes.
I can't remember even the times when he took me fishing. I was just happy to go, but I wasn't happy to have to sit inside the truck
Right.
and make sandwiches for the other men and their sons. So, like, those are the things that I remember. I don't remember, like, him showing me how to put gas in the car. I don't, he wasn't there when I started, I had facial hair at 10. So he was, but he didn't teach me any of that stuff. Girls, I found out.
Wow.
I found out wrong.
Okay. I want to shift a bit because, we are going to be serious victims of time here tonight. Nigel, the only thing I really am a little bit upset with you for, you should have said to me, and I'm not taking responsibility, it should have been 2 hours or a 2-part show. You know what? Nigel, you sneak, man. I gotta bring you on the camera because you're not in the camera right now. I gotta bring you in. Yeah, I want the audience to see your face.
Yeah.
But you said 2. That's a sneaky move.
A 2-part.
Yeah, but it has to be. Yes. I'm hooked. Yes, we have to do it. We will do 2 parts. And please remind me, Mr. Barto, we must do it. This question, Nigel, Patrick's question. right? What?
Well, I think, and I think they're sharing and can validate what I'm about to say, but it's about choices and conscious choices. And I think as young men, we recognize that that's what that is. And so the fact that we are willing to break stereotypes and change some traditions and be people and persons first before a notion of a man who may be a bit more guarded in the background, right? Because I think many of us have experiences of having a loving dad who watched us, and what we're saying, we want interaction, and so there was this kind of protection, looking over you, seeing about you, knowing you're okay, you're well, and that's the role. You know, like my dad, for example, and his father did the same thing for him. My father came home, opened my bedroom door, looked at me so that I was well, I was live, I seemed, okay, doing homework, whatever. Closed, and he just stood there in the doorway for a good 5 minutes. He's checking on his children. He closed the door and he left. There was no hello, son, how are you, how was your day? That's my mom's role, right? And so, but for him, that's major, that's huge, that's what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to, he did what he needed to do on the outside, and he came home and, and so, but back to the choices, we're making certain choices, with our children or the young people in our lives, nieces and nephews and other people. And so we often wonder, didn't they know about conscious choices as well? And so wasn't it a choice for them to do or not do certain things they did or not do? And how come it is for many of us younger people and younger men to want to explore this newer kind of three-dimensional person? And what was it about some of the other generations, as we like to say, that they couldn't step out of some of those boxes that we can step out of? Why does it seem easier or different, or
I think,
right? And for us to say, we're going to do this with our children or our young people, or listen to them in ways that we felt we weren't listened to.
Well,
I think though, right? I think what we have contrast. We have something or an experience to say this is not what we're going to do. We have access to more information. It's a different era. Men are allowed to cry without being chastised or being labeled as not being the alpha male or being men. So there are lots. I'm not clinically trained in this, but I believe that these are some of the things. Like for instance, it was you, Adrian, who said you would not do what your father did, and I think when young boys don't experience what they think an ideal father is or how he should behave, they make a conscious decision that I'm not going to do this with my child. I think my sons experienced that, from whatever the narrative was. I think they're older now, wiser now, but I have to believe they are human beings. There must be residual because these things happened when they were children. So I think when you have that contrast, when you have that example that you either want to follow or not follow, makes a difference. You understand? So I'm just trying to lend some sort of perspective to your question, right? Be it rhetorical or real. That how come we now are able to make these choices? And I think also, because when I think about my own father and how he was raised, I have to be empathetic and sympathetic with him. Because it's one thing to know, but knowledge is never enough. It's how do you do it? It's like knowing you can solve a quadratic equation, but how do you actually solve it? But anyway, again, going back to the chat room. Wait a minute, Anthony, you didn't have to answer. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I asked why. I just wanted to.
Okay, go ahead.
To say something. You know, we're talking about choices, right? You know, generational choices a little bit. And then sometimes our parents or grandparents, they made a choice.
Right.
You know, and only thing that we're doing is just extending the choices they made.
I like that.
You know what I mean? Because, like I said, my father emulated my great grandfather. He didn't emulate his father. He emulated my mother's grandfather. Because he says that my mother's grandfather taught him how to be a man. You know, so that was the choice he made. He made the choice not to follow in his father's footsteps,
Right.
but to follow somebody who he perceived to be a man. You know what I mean? So as he raises us, that he already made a choice. Now it's the choices that we're going to make based on the choice that he made.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think it's just like a
It's a continuum.
continue
Yeah.
thing.
And did we get everybody? Oh, my friend. All right, got it. I have to pan you, bring you in. There you go, my brother.
So, yeah, like
Yeah.
to answer your question, I mean, I have to agree again with Robert. I'm sympathetic to my father because he had, well, when I came to this country, I was 4 years old. I came from Jamaica. The next time I saw my father, I was 10 years old. And only thing I remember about my father is him saying to me, I walked into the dinner, I walked into the hall where we were all having dinner, and all of his sons are around, about 10 to 13 children, and he says, "Boy, the boy no grow." And that's all he said to me. That was the only thing he said to me, and that's all I can remember. I can't remember how he looks. It's like it's a total fog. I can't recall anything of this man. But I'm sympathetic to the fact that he was taking care of 15 children. And from what I know, he was also taking care of his community because he was some sort of politician in Jamaica or whatever. But I mean, regardless of the fact, like I said, it made me know that I did not want to be like him. So it's just, I guess, irony that my son, like, I hug my son. Every time I see my son, I tell my son, I love you. I try to do things that, like that I have an interest, or I could spark an interest in him, try to find out anything that I can use to bring us closer together. And he's like, I guess, he's resistant. But, I know as a person, as a man, as a black man, that as long as I have strength in my bones, that I would never give up,
Good.
So I actually text my son and asked him to listen, and I'm not just saying that because, I hope that he's listening, but I hope that any father or son, for that matter, who's listening, will cherish that moment with their child or their father, because it hurts, and when it's positive, it could be very impactful. I'm sure through all of our stories, you could see that. So yeah, definitely.
I want to go to the chat room, and Patrick said, "Great question, Selwyn." Thank you, Patrick. Kali, when did you realize you were no longer a boy? No, this got to be a quick answer because time is of the essence. And do me a favor, because it's only 2 mics. If you don't mind, Robert and James, you guys could swing that to point to you. So, since you were on the mic, Adrian, you want to take this question? When did you realize you were no longer a boy?
Basic training.
Basic training?
Yeah, in Army. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Part 2, I'm gonna follow up on that because Adrian not gonna get away with just basic training. I know he says a short answer, but my man said basic training, and he smiled. I'm gonna get you, Adrian. I promise. Robert.
When my dad left.
Just when your dad left.
When my dad left.
This is not fair. The time, James.
But this is the tease.
Yeah, the teens. James, you.
When I
Swing the
entered-
mic closer to you. You don't have to lead in, but
Okay. When I entered high school.
When
When I entered high school.
high school, and you saw Anthony?
When all the bills came to me.
Wait. Hold on, Anthony. I gotta pan you in. You and Nigel.
He is his
Repeat.
father's child, I think.
Yes, he is.
Anthony, please repeat that. When what happened?
I said when all the bills came to me. That's when I realized. You know?
And Nigel, you
Driving.
driving. When you started to drive. Okay. Patrick said very honest answers. Karen said can't hear. Patrick said we have permission. Patrick asked again, do you think fatherhood is difficult? Before you answer that, there's another question by G. I read a cartoon today where the mom told her son she wasn't hugging him so he could hug her back, but so that he will hug his children, keep doing what you're doing. I love that. Now, you want me to repeat that? You got the mom told her son she wasn't hugging him so he could hug her back, but so that he will hug his children. Keep doing what you're doing.
Like pass it on.
Yes, pass it on.
Let's go
Fast
go
answers
to Patrick's
again.
question.
Yes.
Yes.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
You hold on, Robert. I want to get this from Anthony because his dad needs to. Anthony, I'm going to ask it again. Do you think fatherhood is difficult? James, sorry.
James.
Oh,
James.
James, I'm sorry. James, you.
Yes, I do think.
You do?
Difficult, yeah.
And you, Robert.
No,
You don't think fatherhood is difficult?
no.
You're back here part two, Robert. Right? You're back here. Could you pull the mic to you, Adrian? What do you think, Adrian?
Yeah, I think it's
You
difficult.
think it's difficult?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Robert, we're not going to go into why and wherefore right now. Anyway. So, for those of you who have children, what is the best experience you've ever had with your child?
I think it's a shelter.
Yeah, that's right. We'll talk amongst ourselves.
For me, I think I'm gonna say it's so many, but I think just spending those moments because we're on borrowed time. Like he doesn't live with me,
Okay.
so every moment that we have, that I think is just fun. Because
And you, sorry, I'm sorry.
No.
You were finished?
no, I'm finished.
Okay. And you, Adrian?
I mean, I really enjoy going to the movies with my son.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's something I look
What
forward to.
particular about that experience?
Well, I mean, I guess it lends a lot to the fact that I like cinema and I'm
Right.
and he does as well. So that's something that we both enjoy. We all talk about the movies and we critique it, and
Wow.
so it's something that we both enjoy.
And did your dad sit down and give you life lessons, or was he more of a lead by example type of person? I think we have somehow answered that before. Do you guys agree with me, or this is just my imagination?
I
agree.
You agree, right? Okay. What is the best advice your father has ever given? Let's start with you, Adrian. Mike, you can put it.
Well, all I can recollect my father saying is the boy no grow, so be taller.
And Robert,
You're like, look at me now.
I still gonna ask you. Nothing.
I don't remember much.
Okay. And what of you, James?
To be a leader, I feel like that's one of the things that I could always remember my dad saying, and yeah, to be a leader.
Be a leader.
Yeah.
And Anthony,
would say to go for your dreams.
what's that?
Go for your dreams.
Go for your dreams.
Yeah.
And Sir Nigel?
He said, whatever you're going to do, work hard to be the best at it that you can. And so if you make the decision to sweep streets, be the best street sweeper there is. There's nothing wrong in whatever your choice is. Just do it to the best of your ability.
I have
Nice.
two father questions. I like that. And I'll go back to you, Robert and Adrian. right?
Okay.
Okay. I'm ready for you, Robert.
I'm ready.
How old were you when you had your child?
I was in my 30s.
You were 30s. And for you, Adrian?
I was 27.
27?
Yeah.
Wow. Pretty young. I was 20. And for those who have children, what was your biggest fear about becoming a father?
Not doing a good job. I didn't want to be like my dad.
And you, Adrian? You could move the mic.
I think my biggest fear was to being able to provide financially. Yeah, so.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I know that's right.
I can relate to that. So, what qualities of your dad's do you think rubbed off on you, Nigel? Well, let's start with James.
I don't know. You know, it's a very. If I had to think about it, I would say my dad is a very strong person and he's very reserved. He hardly ever shows emotion. I feel like I express emotion through my work. I hardly ever, cry behind the scenes or anything, and I feel like I get that from my father.
From your dad?
Yeah.
And you, Anthony?
Well, I would say I don't want to say his work ethic, because I definitely have missed a day.
You're just on vacation.
Yeah, I was on vacation too, so I don't want to go there, but I would say he had rubbed off some of his work ethic on
Work
me.
ethic?
Yeah.
Ah.
That, you work hard at what you're doing, and, you do what you need to do.
And you, Nigel?
There are a few different things, but the biggest thing I would say is that he loves family and loves his family, immediate and extended, and siblings, cousins, everything like that. And I've taken that on. There's something just wonderful about spending time with family members when I get that chance. And there were times where I shunned some of that, but it's a blessing. I have a lot of family, and I appreciate them.
And Robert, anything?
Probably his creative side and
okay.
work ethics.
Oh, and you, Adrian?
Again with the.
Well, I really don't know myself at all. So,
I have to ask.
but from what I'm told, I'm his spitting image, and
Okay.
I act like him, walk like him.
So
I'm told.
something did rub off.
Yes.
Yes. And what activities did you enjoy doing with your dad? I'm not gonna bother to ask you that one, Robert. Adrian, no. Because we pretty much have touched on those, right? Yes. So let's go to you, James.
My dad bought me a tricycle when I was younger, and I remember him taking us out to ride it, and he used to take us to the park all the time, play basketball. I'm not a very good basketball player.
No?
No, but we used to play all the time. So that's what I can remember, my dad he was there, he was present in my life, and I love my father. I just feel like there are certain things he can do better.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're going to have some of these conversations with him, right? And you, Anthony?
Food. Yeah, food.
Oh.
Barbecuing, cooking fish, oysters, clams, whatever you name it,
Food.
That was the thing.
And you, Nigel?
I think there are things that I didn't realize about him, or I didn't see it in the way I see it today. And what I mean is, for example, growing up, he was the one who came to the kitchen table, sat down, and he told stories. But I never saw my dad as a storyteller. He was just someone who's just talking, And he's not necessarily talking to us, but he's telling stories and making jokes and that kind of a thing. And as I've gotten older, I realize maybe I've gotten some of that from him, because he actually is a storyteller. He's still a storyteller, and that's still who he is. He comes to the table, even if we're on the porch. You know, if I'm out on the porch, he comes outside, and he just starts telling the story. And some of them I've heard already. He's repeating them. That's okay, Dad. We love you. But it's just beautiful. It's wonderful because that's his thing. That's who he is, and I get to just kind of listen. You know. Yeah. I like.
You like
actually,
that?
I actually like that now when he tells stories. I didn't always like that.
Well, since the camera is focused on you, finish the sentence. I made my father proud when I.
Oh my gosh.
You want some time to think about that one?
Makes him proud. Everything I do.
I love that. I love that.
I do, man.
I love that. Answer me.
I would say I made my father proud when with the whole creative arts thing. The last show that he saw me in, I just vividly remember we were doing a play, and I looked at an audience and I just saw this thumb, this smile on his face.
Really?
Like, you know.
Wow.
Really great.
And you, James?
I want to believe that I make my father proud every time he comes to church and he sees me do the Bible reading. That's always something that he loves to see me do. So.
Yeah, turn that mic to Robert.
I think when I graduated high school, because when he passed away, they said my sister is actually down there in Miami. She said that on the side of the bed was my picture of my cap and gown, my medallion, and like the tassel.
Really?
Like right next, like it was like an altar, like, you know, that he was. So I'm gonna say when I graduated high school.
Okay.
But can you turn that around, and how does your son make you proud?
How does my son make me proud? I'm proud of everything he does. I mean, like, I'm proud that he's a boy. Mm-hmm. He's a guy's guy. But he'll sit and he can look at me and he'll say, "Daddy, I love you." Mm-hmm. You know, and they look at me like straight, and I be sitting, I'm looking at him like, "Man, what? Okay, what? I don't have any money." You know, that's what. So, you know, he'll be like, "No, Dad, I'm just saying that I love you." So, you know.
Man, I gotta come and see this play, man. Too late. To Robert. Right.
Yeah, again, you know, like my father was in Jamaica, and he passed, I guess, 1999, and you know, he had a lot on his plate, 15 kids, so I guess just becoming a man and taking care of my family, I'm just making the assumption that it would have made it. Yeah, it would have.
And what is your son? What are you proud of?
Well, I'm proud that my son is, you know, living in Brooklyn, living in an environment where it's so easy for him to be led astray, that he's well mannered, he's focused, his pants don't sag, he's respectful. I'm very proud and blessed that, you know, I have a child like that.
Who among you, this panel, is the funniest? You Adrian. Who is the funniest?
Out of us, you mean?
Yes, sir. Out of the 5 of you. Adrian, you. Mike is on you. Who you think is the
Oh, who do I think is the funniest?
Robert.
Yeah.
Robert cracks me up.
That's me, everybody.
I would have to say Robert. Yeah.
Everybody would say that? James, you would say
Yeah, I
the
would
same?
say that.
Okay. And how has spirituality helped you to be the father that you are today, or will be one day? I think everybody can answer this question, right? So let's start with you, Nigel.
Well, it helps me be grounded. You know, so we think about the world, and I am, you know, of the universe. I think it helps bring patience. And so as I talk to young people, as I talk to my nieces,
I wonder if that mic can go a little
my
closer to you,
nephew,
Nigel. Yeah.
I think the angle.
as I talk to cousins, you know, I just try and expose just my experiences and what I've seen and how I've lived, and hopefully that can give them some perspective and choices of what they want to do or don't want to do or how they want to do it.
So you have nieces and nephews.
I do.
I'm going to shift on another question because you mentioned them. Just finish the sentence. My nieces or nephews think I'm cool when I...
Think I'm old when
I'm cool, not old. Cool. Cool.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Already
I am not suicidal. When you're cool, sir.
think I'm cool. I think when I laugh with them, when I just have fun and just playful. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not about your parent like and you're just there to tell me what to do. You know, we just have a real conversation and we run around. And I give them big hugs. Sometimes I crack the whip verbally, you know.
Yes.
And then I say, "But I love you." Yeah.
Nigel.
I am Nigel.
Anthony. Sorry.
Yes. No,
I was just checking to see if you were alert. I was just
demented.
checking. I was just checking to see if you were alert.
What would you like to talk about?
Well, the question is, how has spirituality helped you to be the father that you are today or will be one day?
That's kind of difficult because I'm on the spiritual journey and will continue to be on the spiritual journey. So I hope that spirituality will guide me in the right direction to make the correct choices.
Got you. Love that. Love that. And you, James?
Can I just ask another question too about the nieces and
Yes. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hey, he's got cool.
Yes. Sorry. That was Nigel's fault.
Now my nephews and nieces think I'm cool.
Yes.
It's wintertime.
Why is that?
That's it, because it's cold outside. You know, that's
Okay.
Other than that, I'm a nerd, you know.
All right. Let's get this quick. Twist. You can twist that mic towards James.
Robert was funny.
Well, I think when thinking of spirituality, I tend to think of morality, and you know, my mother was always big on taking us to church and having us learn and read the word and just like the 10 Commandments and rules. I feel like it would keep me grounded. Listen.
Okay.
So yeah.
And you, Robert?
My spiritual journey is like Anthony's. I'm constantly traveling spiritually, learning new things. So I think for me, how do I think it actually helps me? It just helps me to model what it's like to be appropriate at all times. The right adult, the right male, the right father.
I like that.
So.
And Adrian, if you lean towards your right.
Sure.
Right. So yes.
Yeah, I mean,
You can pull that towards you.
yeah, pretty much the same thing. My spiritual journey just helped me really to stay grounded. I grew up in the church. My mom, made us go to church. But I think I didn't appreciate what I was taking in until I became an adult and I started to read the Bible on my own, and I was blown away by the book of Proverbs. I was like, wow, this is powerful and very, like, you can utilize this today. And I think it really helped me as an adult, like, put things in perspective and really,
And time is on us, right? And it is not fair. I know in the beginning of the program we mentioned the theater and we mentioned the show. Nigel, can you tell us where where we can get tickets, when the show is on. Give us some details.
Sure, absolutely. And so there are 4 guys here of a 9 actor cast, and the play again is called Too Late, and it premieres on July 16th for 5 evenings. Runs from July 16th, which is a Tuesday, until Saturday, July 20th, and it's going to be at the Poets Den Theater in East Harlem, 309 East 108th Street. You can purchase tickets at Brown Paper Tickets. So that's toolate.brownpapertickets.com or toolate.bbt.me for getting tickets online. So yeah, you can go there to get your tickets in advance. Tuesday night is our opening night and with reception, and then Wednesday night we have a student night because of the powerful material of the show, and it's speaking about family and fathers and sons and giving voice to young people, that we really want young people to come out, and so we've created a Wednesday night that is specifically a student night, so that we can have a lot of young people, high school students, college students, etc. in the audience. And after the show, we're going to have a question and answer, and they have an opportunity to meet and engage with the cast. So that's going to be awesome. And then we'll have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as regular show nights. And so again, that's toolate.brownpapertickets.com to get tickets for the show, July 16th to the 20th. And it's Too Late. These are the 4 guys. We also have Dennis, who's another guy playing a son, and 4 wonderful ladies in the cast as well. And so we're so excited. We're moving into our rehearsals and getting it all ready for you guys.
I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you for being here tonight and for coming and for participating in such a sometimes controversial topic of discussion. But you were candid, you were eloquent, and I sense, and the audience sense, that it came from your heart, and that's all we can ask for. But what I realize here tonight is that we have to do this again. There has to be heart, and because there's so much more to cover, so much more to talk about. Nigel, I'm so glad that you come on and to bring your, four of your actors.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you invited us to do this. And I'm feeling like, as you talk about part 2, I'm feeling like maybe in a way we're helping to launch a boys' night so that there can be an ongoing discussion that you can lead with men about men in the world. So we not only help men, but we also help the women that we're with and the families that we are part of. And so maybe that's something to consider, that this could potentially launch a kind of a regular, kind of a boys thing on one of your shows during the week.
It sounds very good.
And we're happy to come back.
I'll definitely You guys had a good time?
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to attending the show and seeing you guys. One of the things I'm unfolding is the youth section of CW. I believe in something in a concept called positive peer pressure. I believe peer pressure doesn't have to be negative. And so when you go to the website, you see a page called youth, and on that page, I have highlighted and will continue to highlight young people who are doing positive and extraordinary things. And James, I would like to talk to you about that, right? Because the page has young people who have been on the show and who will come on the show. But I believe there are many young people around the world who are suffering from various kinds of social ills, delinquency, and all these different things. And the consensus is that you need an adult in your life. That is true, but it's only part of the truth. I believe the other part of the truth is that other young people can impact on you just as positive, especially if you're seeing them doing something positive and extraordinary. So guys, I'll need your support. I am unfolding this. I am gathering photographs of young people who are doing extraordinary things with their lives and so on.
James, I would love, Nigel give you my email address. I'd love you to be on there because I would love to bring you back to talk one-on-one at some point. And gentlemen, thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And I want to say I'm looking forward to seeing you again.
Definitely.
And this is Selwyn Collins saying good night. See you again sometime soon. To my audience, tune in tomorrow night, same time, for a conversation with Clarence Moore. Good night.